So there are times in one's, the spare hours when looking across YouTube for some new album to listen to, one figures, why not listen to this album cover with this giant King Kong orangutan on it fighting a jet plane in the sky in a cityscape, and it's called Orang-Utan 1971, self-titled. Yeah, why not? I'll just listen to it because of the effort that someone apparently put into this illustration. That's just genius. That's just something out of a comic book you'd want to read, you know what I mean? And so let's just listen to that on the same principle. It's like we're buying records back in the day. We've come full circle.
Yeah.
And so I listened to Orang-Utan once, and I remember thoroughly enjoying it. And, I come back to it, and I'm thinking, why is this record taking up more of my time than an AC/DC album or an Aerosmith album or any number of hard rock acts from the 70s that aren't, say, Zeppelin, a few Deep Purple albums, Budgie, Blue Oyster Cult, maybe some others, they're not at the top of my mind right now. Feel free to throw them out in the comments.
Yeah, I was going to mention, like, a Blue Oyster Cult thing. Obviously, I'll get into it later, but yeah. The synthesis of two obvious bands, which is this album, in a great way. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah, and so I keep coming back to Orang-Utan. I'm thinking, why is that? And it's when the hard rock bands are still adjacent to what would later be called by retro bands in the 90s, what retro bands in the 90s would be identified as. Orang-Utan sounds like what a retro stoner band would sound like in the 90s, except this is 71, it's at the source, it's slower hard rock, it's not just a blues rock pastiche like a million other bands were at the time, Foghat, ZZ Top, whatever you want to name.
Yeah, plenty, yeah.
And it's Zeppelin itself. It's just more of this, it's this Sabbath grimy, sludgy, dirty thing. And to be honest, like, I've always had a kind of a hard time with the more arena-oriented or kind of like beer-drinking-oriented hard rock. I'm not about beer-drinking-oriented, I mean just kind of like repetitive, kind of just like, loud kind of caveman music.
Orang-Utan isn't beer-drinking music. It has too much, like, weird raga, droney elements to it. Mm-hmm. That, like, there are certain elements of Led Zeppelin, let's say, that can reduce itself, I suppose, to beer-drinking music, whereas they also have expansive hallucinogenic music, But, Orang-Utan, it leans more into, even when it's in a straight rhythm and, it's got weird funk chords going over, like, clean guitar chords on top of the sludge. It's still very, like, psychedelic in a way that, say, like Zeppelin even isn't sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, please continue. I'll get into it later.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, that's a lot of what I was going to say. I think it's so much of the appeal of the Orang-Utan. It's just at the source of what, I get more appeal out of this. It's like this era of the hard rock genre, which has more in common, / 70s heavy metal, which has more in common with, it's not quite as heavy and doomy or occult, or political as Black Sabbath, but it's almost more in common with Black Sabbath than some of the other bands I was mentioning, like AC/DC or Aerosmith. These bands are coming. This is 1971. AC/DC and Aerosmith. They're coming, more in the few years later.
Yeah,
and Aerosmith is more of a bluesy kind of Stones homage, I guess. So that's more in that
definitely,
vein. Right, Orang-Utan is not really in the Rolling Stones vein. Again, you could put you could say Orang-Utan is more in common with like acid rock bands in a way, the late 60s.
Yeah, it's a bit more bluesy than those, but that, like, the raga elements, definitely, yeah. The thing that, it's weird blues raga, which is a rare experiment.
Oh, one thing I ought to mention, this is very important to mention about the context of this band. You're probably thinking, yeah, of course they wanted to be a trippy, weird band. They were called Orang-Utan. Here's the thing. This UK-based band had a record deal in London, and they were named Hunter, apparently. This is according to you can look up research on this band. You can find the information on Discogs, or I think it's like Metal Archives. Definitely on Discogs, but I think they've pasted it on Discogs from this Metal Archives article. This post someone's put there. I might link it in the description. I will link it in the description.
Yeah, chuck it in.
But this is a group called Hunter. This self-titled was going to be called Hunter, and apparently the record label screwed over the band's manager, this is my remembrance of the article is correct. And so this record was released, I believe not in the United Kingdom, just in the United States, and they decided to, because they thought it would sell better, fuck it, let's just call it, and because they assume correctly that people are just buying records based upon the cover, they just put Orang-Utan, people are going to buy it, and apparently the band and the manager had no idea, maybe I don't know, the manager had to convince the band or something, this is a good move, and it is so Spinal Tap, but here's the thing, I mean, I don't know, I don't think anyone's ever heard of this act, Orang-Utan, until it was rediscovered by someone who had the vinyl, who found the vinyl, uploaded it online. It's become a bit of a cult hit.
Nice.
I believe, and it pops up in articles. Hard rock albums you haven't heard, because I see comments in the YouTube video. I came here from this article.
Oh,
which is
okay.
pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
To hear, and yeah, I know. I believe this is uploaded on a brilliant YouTube channel. I want to go to Frank Capra Psych Marine. I think they're called Veteran of the Psych Wars now, but that's just one of the coolest YouTube channels.
Veteran of the Psych Wars.
The mythology around the music that he uploads. He has this like little storyline that he weaves through, and I think he's based in Spain, but he's a visionary. I love that gentleman. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But
awesome.
The music he uploads is extraordinary. Motorhead bootlegs, just it was good stuff. Live bootlegs,
Yeah.
Anyway, the Orang-Utan album has been uploaded there, I know, at one time. There's music in that sort of vein, But, yeah, essentially, poor Hunter, I don't know if their commercial prospects really were assisted by it being called Orang-Utan, but it's possible in the internet age they've certainly been noticed a lot sooner because of the cover art being a YouTube thumbnail. So it has come full circle.
The same reason they wanted to sell it before.
Exactly. Yeah. I find that this principle coming around again is really, really interesting. That is...
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if this is...
Matter of consumption. Because, it's interesting. Imagine how many orangutans are out there that didn't have that happen. No, refinding. Mm-hmm. Maybe like somebody hasn't dusted it off through their attic and found the record that they had that all the other ones have been lost.
Yeah.
And they haven't, transposed it onto MP3 and uploaded it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'd be heaps lost to obscurity.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine.
Yeah.
Because they keep popping up. Like, I know you pop on YouTube or you find something on Radio Music and they're like, what is that? Like,
it's weird, yeah.
How many of these were out? Were pressed like 20? Like,
yeah.
They wouldn't have just bothered to press 20 of these things and then like leave it at that. Like maybe they did.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes you have to.
Yeah, affordability,
I think a lot of this stuff doesn't end up getting released. It's like a kind of a canned thing. They have pressings.
Archivals and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that too. Like that Units thing, for example.
Oh yeah, they're the best. But yeah, anyway, yeah, this album, it's awesome, especially for like a hard rock of its era. Like I feel it's a weird synthesis of Blue Oyster Cult and Led Zeppelin. Mm-hmm. Like it clearly, the singer is trying to imitate Robert Plant, and he does a decent job of it. Say better than Geddy Lee, even though I do appreciate Geddy Lee's voice, which you have to learn to if you want to listen to Rush.
Yeah.
But this guy he does a good replication of it. But it's interesting how, like you mentioned, Black Sabbath. There's clearly a bit of Sabbath in there, but more a retroactive Sabbath. Because like if you put them on at the time, I think people would sooner compare them to a Led Zeppelin than a Sabbath. Even now, maybe, but there is a bit of Sabbath in there because of that retroactive stoner thing you were talking about. It sounds very 90s, in like that pastiche. They took the fuzz box from that time and the sort of the bass sounds. Though, I guess things like Sleep have a deeper bass guitar, which this also has. Not quite as down-tuned. But, I feel that the guitar player as well on this album, he, like... I'm almost convinced it's Jimmy Page. He, like, wanted to be Jimmy Page so much, or, like, it secretly is Jimmy Page... And it was like a weird side project. He didn't want to be like uber marketed or something.
Oh, right.
And he just wanted to do more of a raggery thing. And he's just like, I'll get some other people to just play the other instruments or something. It's either some like complete idol or it is Jimmy Page in disguise. And we're going to start this rumor. It is Jimmy Page. It'll be the Klaatu of the 21st century.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, what was that band that people said was the Beatles?
Yeah, Klaatu.
Wasn't there a thing that Badfinger was the Beatles as well? Or was that some other joke?
Oh, maybe that was Mom Popov, yeah.
Oh, that's that video, yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
I like that idea that Klaatu is the Beatles. But yeah, Orang-Utan is secretly Jimmy Page.
Wonderful.
That's my conclusion.
Oh, I'd want to mention, speaking of Sea Tranquility, I have heard Pete Pardo mention this album, and that's awesome, because it is in that total vein. Like, it's, you wonder, how come the people who love this music back in the day, like, don't hear this stuff and like it? they, at least in that gentleman's case, he absolutely does. So awesome. Sea Tranquility, great stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You probably just, probably like we mentioned, or I think you might have mentioned, the lack of distribution, of these sort of things. Maybe 20 pressings or something. I assume this album might have had more, maybe like 1,000 or something. Because you hear about like the Velvet Underground first album. Its first pressing was what, like 1,000 copies or something? Mm-hmm. Not that much. It was for a certain audience in a certain place,
really like how
a scene, you know. And so there's so much of that music out there, and initially, I'm sure this wasn't distributed like, say, the Aerosmith or ZZ Top, you know, like the bands that came along later and were more widely distributed. Like at the time, if you lived in that time, it would have been way harder to find that sort of thing. Whereas now, I don't know, it's just like it'll come along and surprise you or something. So I do appreciate that there are people out there who want to find new music, even in their, older years, and have appreciated like the same bands for so much.
Oh yeah.
But still want to find new things.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And Orang-Utan is just a great example of where that's gone. A band that otherwise would have been lost to obscurity.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, if I'm ever in the mood for that kind of like hard rock music, I have to say, to some degree, one is exhausted. Those Sabbath albums are so good that you kind of exhaust them. You don't want to you like them so much, you almost don't want to ruin them by listening to them too much.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's great to have Sleep and Electric Wizard and Acid Mammoth and a bunch of other bands. Like
they're similar, but they're very different.
Yeah,
and more intense, and they utilize digital production in a way that Sabbath obviously never had the chance to, and
Absolutely.
couldn't do when they did get the opportunity. Mm-hmm. Which is the great part of those bands. It's just a different thing. It's great to have like Orang-Utan. They were there at the time using that technology, and to do the same thing as well, and you get a similar sound, but it's fresh too.
Yeah, and it's terrific. Like it is kind of we could describe it as pastiche music in a way, but like it's retroactively, like in terms of that's the function and the kind of mood that you approach, or at least I do, on an album like Orang-Utan with. It's like how some people want to construct a playlist of like, kind of stoner sounding music from the 70s. Just listen to this album.
Those
no
riffs,
tracks are overplayed because they're rarely played anyway.
The riffs are made to just like smoke a fat doob. Yeah. Like I'm listening to this and just picturing like a flame going down a doobie. That's how fat these riffs are.
Yeah, you want to there's bongs will have been punched to this album and will continue to be punched to this album worldwide if more people were listening to this. It's smooth music. But no, fun stuff. And even I'm kind of joking. It's like slightly joking about the drug thing. There's no reason that you can't enjoy this completely sober, even like I was saying in the Ummagumma thing. It is what it is. You can just blast this outdoors in like kind of outdoor cooking settings or like partying. And hey, there's no reason you couldn't drink beer to this. I don't drink as much personally. But I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be a grand old time in many circumstances where people want to hear loud, distorted guitars. I mean, especially stuff that we haven't heard a million bloody times on Triple M or wherever else,
Yeah.